When did you start to utilize social media to promote you and your business?
So social media. So as a professional on social media, I would say because there was a whole nother Nandy
YouTube in
before.
2003.
Right. There was a when Facebook first came out.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Gold Standard Podcast. As always, I am Brandon Deswankowski, and I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts, Kate and Brianna. This episode is sponsored by the Karma Collection, clothing that spreads the message of behavior science with everywhere. Today, we are joined by the amazing Dr. Nandi Nelson. She is an LBA. She is a BCBA. She is an LCSW. She is the founder of the Social Behavior Learning Solutions, LLC. She is an entrepreneur and the best dressed in the room. Hello. How are you? We always like to start off by asking, how did you get started in the field? What do you have in the future? And what can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. So thank you all for having me. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be amongst you today. And I'm Nandi Nelson, and I really stumbled into the field like many other people. I think that's usually the consensus. I actually started my journey as a social work student, and during my internship experience, I was either able to go into the developmental disabilities department or the autism department. And at the time, during my Master's of Social Work internship, I didn't know anything about autism, which now I'm like very surprised that I didn't. And I thought, I already know a bit about like developmental disabilities and what that entails because my nephew's uncle had Down syndrome. So I was a part of his life a lot as I was growing up. So I figured, let's try out autism. Why not? And when I started the internship, at first I was like, okay, this is a little different. Like the kids weren't speaking. I was being trained as a social worker. So I really didn't understand or know like how do you interact or engage with this population because I can't like get to know you by talking to you. And through that experience, I like fell in love with ABA. I literally started my continuing education coursework while I was still enrolled in my MSW program. So I was like, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, what do you think? So I was doing two schoolings to an extent at the same time. And that just got me more in love with the field and what we do in the population more specifically. So that was kind of like how I fell into ABA, literally just by taking an internship and figuring, hey, why not learn something new? And once I got there, I just thought this could benefit me somehow. I didn't know in that moment I would want to be a BCBA or become a BCBA. I just knew that this was a science that was helpful for this particular population at the time because that's all I knew about was that ABA could be used for autism. Clearly, that's not the case that we know. But from there, that's when I decided, okay, there's other BCBAs. Well, what is that? And then that kind of got me on the BCBA journey.
Yeah.
What originally drew you to social work?
So I always just had a passion for helping people. My mom would always tell me when I was young, I would tell her, like, I'm not going to struggle like you. I'm going to be my own business owner. I'm going to do things how I want to do it. And when she would tell me those stories, I'm like, man, you were determined at a very young age. Like, sometimes I'm like, are you telling the truth? But I always wanted to help people and didn't know really what that could look like. So when I was in my undergraduate program at Penn State, I majored in human development and family studies. And at the time, I was also a McNair Scholar. And the goal for McNair Scholars are for you to ultimately go into a PhD program, but they would like for you to go into some type of graduate schooling. They're training you to be an ideal candidate for a program. So as I was exploring what potential next step for graduate school that could be for me, I wanted to be a therapist. I did not know that I could be a therapist through being a social worker. Mm-hmm. I thought that I had to go into psychology. Right. However, I learned that there wouldn't be much that I could do as a psychologist unless I became licensed or went on for more education.
That I think we Yeah.
Yeah,
I
all
are
of us
aggressively
went down
nodding.
that.
Yes.
So it's like, okay. So then my advisor said, well, why don't you think about social work? And I only knew of social work from the perspective of like a welfare social worker or things like that. And I was like, I don't really want to be a welfare social worker. That was literally all I knew about social work. And she was like, no, social work is more than that. So I started exploring it a bit and then realized like, oh, this might be something that I would like to do because there was so much optionality as well. I could get a terminal degree where if I did want to become a clinician right after school, then that would be something I was able to do. But once I had the internship, things kind of pivoted for me a bit. So, but that's how I got into social work.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you need to collect hours for both
Yep.
social work and your
Yes.
BCBA. How the heck did you do that?
So I think I got lucky. I don't know, who is watching after every step I take. But yeah, I got really lucky because being that I was a social work student within a department that had both BCBAs and social workers, I was able to almost like double down on my hours.
Wow.
So when I started the program, or when I started my supervision hours, my supervisor for my social work degree also was duly certified as a BCBA. So
That's like a rare unicorn
yes,
in the middle
that's
of
what I
like
said. I don't
the
know who's
forest.
looking down on me, but
Yeah.
I was just really put in a really nice position. So I was able to do tasks for both of the requirements, meaning like the clinical requirements as well as the requirements for the BCBA. And I ended up finishing my social work requirements before the BCBA requirements. And then funny thing is I took both exams, like I think it was like 2 months apart from each other. I don't know how I did it, but yeah, but the backstory of that is a colleague had encouraged me to take my social work exam. And I was like, why are you so eager for me to take this exam? Like, something's up. And then I realized, I was like, oh, you want to see me fail. But guess what? I got both of them. But that's how I was able to, get the hours. And it honestly worked out well for me in that situation.
How much would you say the coursework for social work fell into like the BCBA coursework? So like the hours that you were fulfilling, were there any times that you were like, oh, these kind of fall into both categories at the same time? So you would be able to count both those hours for two separate fields, essentially.
Yeah, so I think in all honesty, like a lot of the clinical work that we do, not in terms of like BCBA as it relates to like the objectivity and how we interact and respond when behaviors are occurring or how we assess to an extent. But a lot of the things as a social worker are the same things. Like you have to assess, you have to do interviews with families to get information, biopsychosocials. I know we don't call that in ABA. We're just like information gathering, but that's exactly what we're doing.
We actually do use that term on our reauthorizations for the top part when we discuss like just their medical background and things like that. So we see it pop up, but we don't use it often.
Yep. So that in addition to like how do you write a treatment plan? Something that both fields have that are similar is like really looking at what is it that the end consumer is wanting as it relates to their goals, and how is that directly related to whatever it is as to the reason why they're seeking treatment or their diagnosis and things like that. I will say that with the social work side, the goals are a lot more flexible than BCBA's or like the medical model of what is required of a BCBA. It could be like literally a goal could be like the client wants to be happy or something like that, right? Obviously, like those more mentalistic terms.
Right.
And obviously, that's not something that's going to fly from a behavioral analytic perspective. But I think there's just a ton of overlap. But I would say, so I think that was how I was able to obtain both hours. But I will say in general that I do think that me being a social worker has drastically like helped me a lot when it comes to like connections and building those relationships with families and even staff or colleagues. Because I think that when I think back on my experience with my continuing education courses, obviously my master's was not in ABA, but I do have a PhD in ABA. And even in my PhD program, there were no classes that really focused on the interpersonal practice skills that you need to have when you are working with well, for my case, like parents or siblings or other family members who need more touch points on an interpersonal and a connection level, not just, okay, well, how are we going to get your child or your family to move from point A to point B? Yeah. So that's definitely something that I think has helped me, because I already had that background of like, how can I be an active listener? How can I hear what you're saying and then really extract what is most important, and then figuring out, okay, how can I be with you in this experience where you feel like I am an ally as well as a support, and not just someone that's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Yeah. So that's been very helpful for me.
Which is cool too, because a lot of what we do in the field of ABA is we pick up those skills, but we're not necessarily like taught how to engage with parents, especially at that level. So you having that dual certification allows you to already be like, hey, I already know how to do this, which also kind of segues into your coaching. So you're able to then coach everyone that's under you, like, hey, you do have this certification, but here's something that you might not have been taught in school. Here's how we're going to interact with these parents. Here's how we're going to advise them on how to operate with treatment plans and the plans moving forward at home. Because that is a big point of contention a lot of times when we go into a home and we're just depending on their prior experience with ABA, they might not be as open to trying our plans or listening to our advice if we're not conducting ourselves in a way that their feelings matter too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think sometimes when we are interacting with families, it might be that because of our own experience, right? We know how to get you from point A to point B, or like in a round, we know how we can get you closer to what it is that you're hoping to have for your family or for yourself. And I think that for some of our families, when they either are newer to ABA, don't really understand, you have someone coming in and literally shaking your world up. Like, honestly, that's what's happening. And if we are not, as practitioners, really taking that time to understand, okay, like, why is there a little bit of resistance, or even utilizing some of that motivational interviewing, because I do that a lot with my families. Is like, okay, this is what I hear you saying, or this is what you're telling me, but like your actions aren't necessarily matching exactly what you're telling me. And then through that, we can see, like, where are you at on your readiness to change, right? Because when we're thinking about the treatment planning or the interventions that we're putting in place, it requires a lot of change on everyone else except for the direct consumer oftentimes. So if you have someone that's saying, oh, I would like to do this, I would like to do that, but then every time we're meeting or different things like that, I don't see that that's happening, there is some type of disconnect or mismatch. And also, too, for some of the my staff or other people that I support or coach, it's like sometimes we have to take a step back and not really see often, like, not really always have on our practitioner hat when we're interfacing with families. Because if a family needs something, and like, say, for example, it could be like a basic need. If their electricity is at risk, if there's food scarcity, or they're worried about, am I going to get this job? Who cares about a treatment plan? Yeah. Like, that is the last thing on a totem pole in terms of priority for a family. So I think that sometimes we also have to, like, yes, we have a job, we're here to do this job, but like, how can we really meet this family truly where they're at when it is that they might appear non-compliant, or they don't want to do something, or not invested and not engaged. And it's like, that might not even be the case. It may be something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny quick story. I had a family who had a learner who had some OCD tendencies, and one of the ideas we had was like, all right, well, we're going to go into his room, into his private area, and we're going to move one thing. We're literally going to move it. And for the first day, it was complete chaos. And we came back and we did it again. After like 2 or 3 weeks, we noticed we're still kind of meeting the same chaos. So we asked mom, like, hey, are you guys conducting the same? Like, we kind of were in agreement. And it turns out the mom also had OCD tendencies. So when we left, she then kind of put it back in place. Yeah. So then we, after like conducting that and assessing, we were like, okay, so this does bother you. So we're going to stop that, because obviously us moving things in your environment, it also shakes your world. Again, like going back to the whole, like, it really does shake their world without us really doing our due diligence and assessing what are you comfortable with, what are your boundaries, even if it's something so small. This is your house, we have to respect that.
Right.
So having like the right knowledge and the right team, we were able to just respectively apologize and say, hey, moving forward, like, please let us know if there are boundaries like that. Like if there's areas in the house you don't want us to work in, if there's things that you don't want us to work on program wise, like, please let us know.
But I think that's a good point. Like you were saying, as new BCBAs, we don't have those skills and no one's teaching it unless you have a good supervisor who's modeling those things. So I think Kate and I do a lot with new BCBA training, and that's where a lot of staff struggle. They're like, well, mom's not compliant, dad's not compliant. They're not answering me. What's going on? And then you become aversive. And now there's no progress being made.
Yeah, that's true.
That or you got to learn to like warm up to them. We're not setting these overarching goals in the beginning. It's like just be present for 10 minutes of the session. You know what I mean? To get acclimated and just making that time and carving that time out while we're providing those ABA services. I know it sounds like nothing, but I mean, 10 minutes to parents could be a lot.
Yeah. And just in those 10 minutes can really solidify and build a relationship. And oftentimes it was like, I think back when I first started, or just trying to even find my way as a BCBA, like parents at some point would think that I was there for them. I mean, yes, I am, but it was like, okay,
so
well,
the therapist had to go real quick.
Like, hey,
they're like, right, exactly. They're like, hey, how's it going? And got me at the kitchen table for, I'm like, okay, like inching off, like, all right, we'll be back, we'll see you. And they're still talking. So I think though, like those little deposits of like good interaction, and even if you feel like, oh, I didn't even say anything, but like from a parent's perspective, especially, it's like, I feel comfortable with you. You know my kid. You've been in my home. You know my story. So it's a lot easier for me to maybe speak to you because you have an idea as to what I'm going through and what's going on. So it's always great to have those little moments where you can connect, and it just turns into like the ability to build really strong rapport with your parents. And when you have to have those difficult conversations, it makes it a lot easier because you've already put some good deposits in their account.
Speaking of those difficult conversations, how do you coach your staff on how to be able to conduct those?
So and I think when I'm coaching my team on having difficult conversations, I really ask them, one, how are they, right? Where is their mental state and ability to be able to have this conversation? Because I think when you're going into a difficult conversation, one, you have to be confident. That's a piece. I mean, you can go in, scared. Your voice could shake a little bit, but it can't shake too much. Where you're like, all right, But also, too, like, do you have the facts or whatever it is that is clear that you are going to articulate to this individual? And then what type of relationship do you also have with this individual? Because if you have maybe not the best relationship, then you could say, you have a beautiful rose. I love the rose. And like, I don't have a relationship with you. So automatically you're like, you're turned off. You don't want to listen to me, right? Yeah. So I think when I am coaching my team, I look at those three aspects to help them to understand, like, how are we entering into this interaction, and then also to doing some modeling, right? Coaching them. Okay, well, maybe I may not say that. Maybe you can try this, because you also have to come for me too, with any difficult conversation, you have to understand, what is my intent? When I'm coming into this conversation, even though it might be a difficult one, if my intent is to figure out how we can work together and problem solve, that's a lot different than I'm coming in here to blame you and tell you that you're wrong about everything. So I also make sure that, like, our intent is good, so that when we are speaking to a family member or even a staff about something where it's not aligning, that they feel that you're not coming in from an attack standpoint. Also, too, letting them know, give them the floor. They may disagree with you, and that's okay. And if that's the case, like, how can we best move forward if that's a possibility? And if not, then that's okay as well. So usually when I'm coaching them, those are like the bigger points that I make. And then also, too, just like, obviously, like tone of voice. What is your demeanor when we're thinking about those? Again, going back to that interpersonal practice stuff as a social worker, like, are you open? Do you look like you're closed off in terms of, like, are you making facial expressions when they're saying certain things? So those are all of the things that we have to consider, both for verbal and nonverbal communication when going into a conversation that's difficult.
And again, great points because not something they teach in school. So you might be saying, oh yeah, like I had great conversation, but as mom's telling you like, hey, listen, I don't agree. You're like,
Yeah. And I think
Really?
sometimes we're so caught up in like almost like the ethics of it. Like sometimes you're almost like scared into making sure you're so ethical that you're like, I don't want to blur these boundaries. I can't ask mom about this, or like I shouldn't do this. So it's like that slippery slope.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, there's no skills being taught. It's just like, hey, don't do this. Don't blur those
Right.
boundaries.
Yeah.
But there's no solution.
Yeah.
no practice to it.
Yeah, and I think it's like a lot of learning on the job, which
Yeah.
I'm sure we all have experience with
Yeah.
learning on the job, right? And I think also when we're perhaps like trying to figure out like, is something ethical or not, is something within the bounds of what my role is, really understand like what is my intention. Like there's many things I would love to know about situations. I'm like, is that your business? Like you
Right.
might want it to be your
Right.
business, but that's not important to the work that you're doing with,
Right.
you know, the child or the family. So you can have your thoughts in your mind, but keep it pushing, mind your business. It don't got nothing to do with you. But so I think too, it's like also for, and I know we were just talking about difficult conversations, but I think in terms of like relationship as a whole, I think it's also important like to be super authentic as well as approachable with your families. Like there's certain things, and for certain families I can say certain things a certain way to some and joke around and pretend and like say little things, and certain ones I'm like, yeah, no, I can't say that or do that with you. So I think that that's also important, where it's just like we say with our kids, it's not a one size fits all cookie cutter approach. The same things when we're interacting with our families, there are certain ways, like I said, that I can speak to families, and there's certain ways that it's like that's not appropriate because of the type of relationship that we have.
100%.
When pursuing your PhD, do you feel that you had to delegate a lot of your responsibilities during that time to other people within your company and your business? That way it could free up some of your time during the day, or maybe.
Yeah, so for me, I was delegating, but it didn't necessarily free up my day. I felt like other things then got put on my plate. So like I didn't have any like cases that I was overseeing, no supervision, things like that, or even like staff coaching or supervision during that time.
So you were doing a lot of like back end admin.
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And even with that, though, because I felt like some of my time got freed up, then it was like all of the initiatives or things that I was wanting to pilot or explore, then I was like, oh, I have the time to explore those. So looking back, I should have utilized my time more wisely, because then I wouldn't have had to go home, do it, studying, doing all the things
Right.
on the weekends. But yeah, I was delegating, but it didn't necessarily create additional space and opportunity for me to focus on my studies. What it did is create additional opportunity for me to explore other ventures.
So overachiever.
Clearly.
Now, while you were pursuing your doctorate as well, you halfway through you had gotten married. What was that like for your marriage as well? Knowing that you were kind of dedicating a lot of that time to getting the doctorate.
Yeah, so for my husband, hey boo, it's like, no, we stop. I'm like, you gotta watch this
Shout out,
podcast.
boo.
I shot you, my man. Anywho, so it was. I started my program during COVID, so I think that also looked different because he was primarily working from home. So it's still like we were able to like connect or do different things.
Yeah.
However, once I had to go back in person for work, he was still working remotely, and I think from our relationship, I think it already kind of started to shift a bit when I started my business, because like I was saying before, in general, I was like, oh, let's go here, let's do this, dinner, brunch, all the things.
Hot girl summer, yeah.
Yes, hot girl year round. But with my man with me.
Yeah.
So after that, like once my business started and it was just me, it was like, oh, she's running around, she's doing all the things. So I think he got a small taste of probably what to expect. But then once I had was full in swing with my program, I think for us, I wouldn't say like we shifted in our relationship, but like we had to do a shift in terms of like what was our responsibilities? What was I responsible for? What are now you going to be responsible for? Let's have a conversation about like if there's areas where I cannot be present or things that I cannot do just based upon my schedule. How are we working together so that you can pick up what I can't do and vice versa? So I think that was a good thing, because I think when you're thinking about, for me, more specifically like marriage, there's going to be lots of times where there's ebbs and flow in relationship or responsibilities or ventures, and having that ability to communicate about like, well, what is it that you need from me? And that was something that I had to do more, is like, what is it that he needs? Because my husband is super understanding. He lets me fly and he supports all of the crazy things and ideas that I have, even though sometimes he's like, what is wrong with you? I know he's saying that. He don't tell me that, but I'm like, I know he's like, girl, you crazy. So I think also too, like, checking in to see, okay, I know I wanted to do this. I said this, I'm in school, I'm doing this. And like, where am I carving out that time to dedicate to you? And he's a big family person. So I think that at one point was challenging, because he loves to do things with his side of the family, or I mean, the family in general, but we're closer to his side of the family than mine. Mine is in Pittsburgh. So it was also like, I can't be present for all those things because I have to study because of this. And I think he started to understand what that looks like. And now, since I'm graduated, he's actually in school. So now I'm getting a taste.
Now it's like a flip.
And I don't like it. So I was like, you're very understanding, because I'm like, where are you going now?
He's like, hot girl summer. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
But he's studying. He's hot boy summering
there we go.
with his classmates. So, yeah. So, yeah, but that was the journey there.
I was just going to say, what would be like a couple tips that you could throw out to other clinicians who are studying for, even their masters, to, create those opportunities for a healthy relationship? Understanding like we're not going to have the exact time that we did prior, but like here's how we can still connect.
So I would say definitely communication, and I think everybody always says like communication is key, and really just checking in, because for my situation, like my husband seemed to be fine. Like he didn't have any gripes or any complaints, but it's like, I think maybe I was taking as well that for that advantage of that, and not necessarily always like checking in to say, okay, it seems like you're good, but like, let me check in. How is it? Because I know I'm busy. I'm doing all these things, and like perhaps I'm home, and then instead of maybe wanting to engage or do different things, it's like I'm on social media and my husband's not on social media. So it's probably like, okay, what's happening here? Like, and he doesn't get up like, social media is great. He's like, who cares about social media? So I think like definitely communicating, also to understanding like, what is it ultimately that you are wanting your relationship as a couple to look like? Because I think that that's also important. And also just thinking about like, what does this sacrifice look like, and how is this other individual sacrificing things for you? And not to say like, trying to think of how to best say it. Not to say it as if like they're doing something because of you or for you, but like recognizing that this person is sacrificing the quality time or things like that, and not taking that for granted. So I think that would be something. And I know you said more so like the couple, but also for yourself, like knowing what do you also need for yourself? Because for me, just by nature, I always put other people's needs in front of mine, and probably why I wanted to be a social worker in the first place. It's like, I want to help people. I'm like, you need to help yourself. Try to help everybody else. But I think like I would, as I reflect, like oftentimes because I was like so overwhelmed or just had so many things going on and trying to help everybody, I would find myself drowning. And I think that was probably also why my husband gave me a lot of grace and like wasn't on me about like, hey, why you on social media not, watching a movie with me, is because like I would come home and like just like crying and tired and like when I say I feel like I'm about to cry right now, I'm not though. But like I feel like it was just felt like so much weight was continuously on me, and then I would have these moments of just like literally like, I don't want to say like an outburst, but it would just like come, and then he was like, just like, oh, I don't want to rub your back, but like, like, oh, it's okay, like I'm hugging, like it's fine.
Modeling.
Yeah,
there we
you're
go.
Fine, it'll be okay. And I'm just like, but you don't understand, like, I don't know, the business and the school and the paper, and
you're
nobody
like, this
gets
is what
it.
I deal with every day.
Right. I was like, nobody just gets it. Nobody understands everything I'm going through. And like, you see, this was the voice though that I was using too. But so I think really knowing like what do you need for yourself, and I think now at this ripe tender stage of life that I'm in, I'm really starting to recognize like you can still do for others, but you really have to do for yourself, because like you should not get to the point where you're literally coming home frequently crying and having these like meltdowns almost because like you're so overwhelmed because you have no time for yourself and you decided to do all of these things. Nobody told you to do all these things.
I was going to ask, because you used the word drowning, and that's very accurate for a lot of us in the field. So now, as you begin to progress within ABA, are you able to identify those precursor behaviors in yourself to say, like, I'm beginning to get to that drowning phase. I'm putting too much of myself out there. I'm not taking enough time for myself. And if you can identify them, what do they look like, and how do you begin to kind of drift away from them to save yourself before you get to that drowning stage?
Yeah, so I think for me it's like I feel like I start to be like very short with people, and I'm like, okay, like you need a moment. So I'm like either really short or like in like hyper focus, hyper everything. Like everything is just like has to move quickly. Like my brain is just like, probably scattered because it's like I have so many things and I'm like, okay, I have to do this. And I think that it creates a sense of urgency that is not there because I've put this sense of urgency on myself because I've said yes to so many things that I should have probably said no to. So I think that is a sign for me that like, okay, you're getting there. Or if I'm coming home or at the end of the day, I'm just feeling like mentally, physically, and emotionally just drained. And if it's recurring, then I'm like, okay, like you're gonna be, oh my gosh, nobody understands. Like you about 2 weeks away from that, so you better fix it up. So definitely those are things that I name. And then also too, just like checking in on just like myself mentally and also spiritually, because I'm a very spiritual person. So when I find that I am also like pulling away from the things that I know that can really help to center me, that is also a sign that like, okay, you're saying too much to certain things where you're not really engaging in those things that help to like keep you stabilized and keep you calmer. And when I start to do that, then only a matter of weeks or months where I'm like, okay, now I'm back into that space of feeling like I'm drowning and like it's the end of the world and I'm by myself in this. And it's like, that's also not true.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hear you say that because Brie and I recently spoke at a conference and we talked about burnout. And one of the biggest things is to be proactive and not reactive. And I feel like too many people are waiting for that drowning stage.
Yeah.
And they're not able to identify their precursor behaviors. And if you are in tune with them, you really can save yourself from that ugly crying face that you keep bringing up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really necessary. Like we already work under like oftentimes like high stress environments or like always having to continuously think on your feet and just like so much is always coming at you all the time. So I think that when you work in that type of environment, it's also important to identify like what can be the causes of burnout or what is the source of burnout. Because I also did my dissertation. One of the variables was burnout for my dissertation. And I had focused it on ABA practitioners, both BCBAs and RBTs, BTs. So it was interesting to see like what were the reasons for burnout. But going in, I had hypothesized that a lot of the sources of burnout were the job, right? The factors of the job, the inconsistent schedules, the clients, the things like that. But through the research, oftentimes the things that people identified as areas of or causes of burnout were not even related to the job. So when we're thinking about like what are the things that we can do proactively, it's like that can be an area that we can really hone in on, whether it be like the environmental things that are happening in our personal lives that then kind of trickle over and carry over into work. And again, not to say that it can't happen vice versa, like the work carrying over to home, but like when we are able to be more proactive and really understanding like what is that true cause and how can we change the things that can help us to decrease our burnout, or how are we ourselves creating the burnout per se, or saying, again, for my case, saying yes to the things that are causing me burnout. Like, I did not have to say yes to this. So if I didn't say yes to this, or was more mindful of how I'm being separated from the things that keep me stabilized or like help me best, then I probably wouldn't be burnt out and now thinking I need a vacation. And then it's like, oh, I took a vacation, but now I'm back and the work is still like, so just really trying to figure out like what is the actual source and not just naming what's easy, which might be, oh, work.
I think that's one of the hardest parts because it's different for everybody. It's not
True.
like one operational definition that blankets over every BCBA, RBT, BT, whatever, whatever you want to point that to. But it's hard for people to identify.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to look internally at yourself. We're really good at doing it with other people.
Right. Yes.
But we never like take the time to use the science on ourselves.
That's true.
And a lot of times it's like the accountability piece too, is like if you admit that you're drowning in a certain aspect that you were telling people that you were good at, you feel like you're failing.
Yeah.
You feel like you're failing at the job, or you're letting somebody down, or anything like that. And I think one of the things that we should do more as practitioners, I know in at least BDA, we're really proud of the culture of like speaking up about that kind of stuff. Like if you are struggling, you're not failing.
Yeah.
You're gonna fail if you blow up and you get to that ugly cry.
Yeah, for sure.
Because now you look crazy in front of a bunch of people. But like again, identifying and really just like honing in and admitting, like, hey, I really thought I was better equipped. I'm not. I'm not doing so great. I had a really rough day, and I'm taking it a little bit more personal than I should have. But here's where I'm at. Now, how do we kind of pick up some pieces?
Yeah. And that's definitely very important. And I think for me, in terms of like where I am as a business owner, is I had to start to identify like a support system outside of work, because I think like I can't tell my team like I'm drowning. It's like, oh no, you cannot say that. Like they're like, okay, everybody, scatter, right. Like
the
you
captain
can't,
of the ship.
exactly,
Oh, no.
exactly. Like you can't do that. So I think for me, it's it has been a little bit different, and has made me realize like I have to also create another support or community outside of the community that I have at work, or even too outside of my husband, because there are certain things that I can say, and he's like, okay, like I understand. I'm like, but you don't understand, right? And the same for him and his job. There's things I'm like, okay, like that's not a big deal. And he's like, but it is a big deal. So I think that was something that was important as well, so that I can have the ability to say like, I, am not doing my best, or I'm needing help or support with this, and also feeling like I'm not the only one, because I think that oftentimes our field can also feel like that only one type of syndrome, like I'm the only one dealing with this or going through this, and then you speak to someone, you're like, wait, oh, you're doing this? Okay, all right, I thought I was tripping a little bit, but so.
I will say that is something as an entrepreneur you have to kind of battle with, because you have to put on a brave face for everybody underneath you. But there's nobody above you to complain to.
Yeah.
Because Bree and I always say complain up, right? But what happens when there's nobody above you? Like, who are we complaining to now?
Right,
you know?
right. And I think that's where like that community comes in for me. It's like,
do you have a coach or mentor that you go to?
So now I have a coach that I have been using. We've been working together for 3 months now, but it's more of a like general business coach, not necessarily like field specific. So that has been helpful, really, to help me with like training my mind and the way my mindset and the way that I think as a business owner, which I thought is very necessary, because I was a clinician. I didn't go to school, as you
For
have
business.
heard in the interview. I didn't go to school for business. So I think that was something that I needed as it relates to how I'm progressing. But in terms of being able to have someone to, share or complain to, that's where the community comes in, and really the people that are also business owners within the ABA space and understand what we are going through as business owners, and helping to either guide me in certain ways. So I've had a lot of, I would say, like unofficial like mentors or coaches along the way, just like, or people who might be a little further along than me or at the same place as me, because I think like you don't have to necessarily be a business owner or someone that is, have been in the field for a very long time in order to be able to bestow or share knowledge or information that can help me. So I think from a complaining standpoint, I do that most with my husband or my other fellow business owners. But as it relates to even like helping to build myself and my mindset or like my leadership skills, I can learn from anyone and have learned from anyone, even those that are under me within my company.
Yeah. And along with that, it's kind of a nice segue too. Being the business owner that you are now, knowing everything that you know now, what were some of the pitfalls that you might have been able to avoid? And what were some of the moments that made you ugly cry during that journey of entrepreneurship?
Yes, no, it wasn't yesterday. I've been happy lately. So I would say I think my biggest pitfall, and it's hard to say this, is as a business owner, leading with more my heart and leading with my clinician mind and not leading with a business mind, right? Because I didn't have a business mind. So I think that there was a lot of decisions that I made because I was like, oh, well, this is what the family wants, or this is what the team wants, or this is what, I should do because like as a clinician, this will be pretty cool to do. And it was like, is that what the budget is saying? Because you're just making all these, you're making a lot of choices that don't align with what the budget is saying you can do. So I think that was like the biggest shift that I had to make, even like on my mindset and because I think like my husband is very, very business savvy, and I thought because I was a clinician and I do this work and I've been doing this work for a while that I knew what was best for the business, but I only honestly knew what was best for the business from a clinical lens, not from a like functional and organizational standpoint. So I think that me being more open to hearing opposing thoughts, or how I was doing something wrong and it should look this way, and not taking it as personal. I might be like, okay, it takes me about 5 minutes to simmer down, and I'm like, okay, all right, you're right. So I think that me being able to accept feedback a little bit more has been something along that like journey that I would have changed a little earlier. And then I think in terms of like my ugly cry moments, honestly, it always has to do with, I think my core is like, I always want to do good by people, and I always think about people. So every time there's been things that I've either wanted to do or add on to the business, or if like a staff wants something, or I'm like, oh, I wish I could pay people more. I wish I could add this. I wish I could do that. And I mean, it's me putting pressure on myself, right? Nobody is, I mean, they may be, but like nobody's like, Nandy, these are my demands. Like no one's doing that. Yeah. And I'm always thinking about other people, or, oh, if their families, if I can do this for them, or, oh, if I can just do this for them. I think like those moments where I'm unable to meet those needs that nobody asked for, but I've thought that people should ask for or can ask for. Then those are the moments where I do those ugly cry moments. Or even too, it's like I can even remember just like few years ago was like with the whole UHC situation and like them not paying us for like 6 months, and me still providing services to many families for 6 months. And it's just like, how do you how everyone else still has to get paid on their frequency, and if you don't, then you're going down in history as the worst place ever. So it's just like that was a moment where it was like an ugly cry of like, and then you're reaching out and they're giving you the runaround, and you're here, you're there, nobody has an answer for you, but they still want you to keep servicing. Yeah. And people expect to still have their jobs, which, we were fortunate in that respect. But it's just like, I think there's so many things like that happen behind the scenes that, my team doesn't need to be privy to this, because this is not a them problem. This is a me problem. So like little things like that, I think are like those moments that make me like, well, they're not little things, they're big things, but that make me ugly cry and just think like, why is the world this way? Help, just come on. So
that does make you an excellent leader, though, to be able to navigate that, but also talk yourself through it to say like, I'm not going to bother my staff with this.
Mhm.
Like,
Thank
this
you.
is not their burden to bear. It's mine. I set up this business.
Yeah.
It's something that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like, and that's why I was saying, like, I think from early on as a business owner, but even like in that moment, like thinking of still having that clinician hat on, right? Like if it was a pure business only mind, there's no way that you should be serving nobody that long and not getting a penny. Like no way, right? But to understanding like what is the weight that this decision could hold if it is that we're unable to service or people aren't able to keep their jobs and things like that. So I think like there are pros and cons to having both like clinician mindset and business mindset, but I think that some of the decisions that I've made in general, even that in itself could have potentially tanked my business, right? Because you're relying on a wish and a hope and a maybe, and they could have said we're not giving you anything. Then what would I would probably not be here today because I would have been like deuces to the field and we ain't send me my money after, but bye y'all. But yeah, so I think that I never want, and I'm probably the social worker in me, I never want to burden others with the problems that are mine. If there was something that I could speak to my team about or let them know that wouldn't also heighten their anxiety or stress responses, then I could have had specific conversations. But if it's something that I can internally figure out, or with my community figure out, or with my husband figure out, then there's no need to raise everybody else's stress levels. Mine is high enough. So if I can help to keep everything at bay and people not knowing and not missing a beat, then fine. But if it's necessary, then I'm going to communicate.
Yeah.
Right. And like, from a business perspective, if you did bestow all of that onto your clinicians all the time, their work ethic would tank like immediately.
And it's already like a lot. Yeah. Sometimes I wish y'all knew. Cause
I know. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could
do.
be just like a behavior tech, just a behavior tech.
Yes.
That's it.
I was like,
No grad school, no nothing. Just do my thing.
I'm just like, I know everyone like always wants to aspire for certain things, and I think that that's great, and I always encourage. But I think it's always interesting because I am very active on social media where I like see people make certain comments, and I'm like, you have no idea. Like, I'm like, just be quiet. Like, I told myself, just shut up. Like, don't even. I'm like, you literally have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, no idea what goes on in order to like operate an organization. Like, even if it's on a super, super small scale, you have no idea like how much stress the individual that is like running the thing is under. And I'm like, and then you're complaining about a piece of toilet paper? Like, please. Like, don't get me started. And then I'm like, okay, Nandy, you're getting short. Self-reflect. What's going on?
Precursor.
Use the strategies.
Exactly.
Sorry. No.
I think that's something too, like everyone sees the end product and like the shiny package on social media and they don't see the behind the scenes. They don't see the Nandy that didn't go out and have those social engagements because you were studying. Yeah, Hot Girl Summer. Maybe, this summer's the one, Hot Wife Summer.
Hot
maybe.
wife, yes, absolutely.
But people don't see that, and those comments get made where it's like, oh well, she's lucky, she's this.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
And people don't understand. And I think sometimes we struggle, even within the field, where up and coming BCBAs see the end product and don't realize what goes into it, and then are further discouraged almost. And then they're like, I don't think this is for me.
Because I think there's a balance of like, and I think I try to do this as well on my social media, more specifically like my YouTube. Is like still being encouraging, but also being honest. Because I think it's really easy to, like, when you're really telling people what it is, it's really easy for them to get super discouraged or you to sound extremely negative and like you're against everything. But it's like, again, that's not the intent. I just want you to know what you may be getting yourself into. Yeah. So I think that that's something that I have tried my best to do a lot, because people do think like, oh, you're a business owner, you can do whatever you want. Like, Yeah, I can, but I still
To a degree.
Right, to a degree, right? Because even say, for example, for me, if I am going into work and I'm running late, I let my admin know, hey, I'm running. I don't have to let you know anything. I I can roll in and do what I want when I want. If I want to leave, I can leave. If I don't want to say something communication wise to you, I don't have to. But it's just like that common courtesy, and it's like, how are you also modeling the behavior that you want to see other people model? Behave as or perform. So I think too, when we're talking about like social media as well, it's like that balance of like, yes, you want people to be inspired and you want people to know like this is possible, but also to know that like sometimes it's not a day or a week or a year where these things that you're seeing that you're like, oh, this looks great, that happens. Like, and if it does happen in that short amount of time, there has been so many trials and tribulations and ugly cries and like feeling like you're just at your end of the rope and not really knowing how you might carry forward that has happened during that timeline. So I also try to be as clear but not as discouraging when I'm talking to people about my journey, just so that like, listen, it's not as easy as it looks.
100%.
And you brought up social media. When did you start to utilize social media to promote you and your business?
So social media. So as a professional on social media, I would say, because there was a whole nother Nandy
YouTube in
before.
2003.
Right. There was a when Facebook first came out. So I'm on there like, I'm like, girl.
Facebook, I'm over here like, let's talk about post MySpace.
Oh, MySpace. Yes, I did have. I was to change up my little dolls and have my Chris Brown. When I was in my relationship went sour, then I would have to change my song on the MySpace. I'm like, I'm single now.
Let them know.
It's like we ain't in a good space. But I would say, like, as it relates to sharing more information about like ABA or being a BCBA, I probably started more heavily, and I would say either between like 2016, 2017. Yeah. And I would say like I would start to talk about it more, but I would say like really pure like content surrounding the experience of a BCBA, probably like 2019 or so. Yeah. So I ebb and flow with that because I'm really passionate about ABA and helping other people that aspire to be business owners, or even because I'm dually certified. A lot of people have questions about that and how I was able to do that. So I try to share information, but I also too don't want to be like put in a box of like, I'm just an ABA business owner or like, so I think that right now within my social media phase, I'm trying to figure out like, what does that look like? Like, I don't want to just be like, oh, Nandy can help you if you want to start a business. Like, no, I can do more than that. And I can help you with other things outside of like, if you're not in the field of ABA. So I'm really trying to figure out like, what can that look like from a social media aspect from me? Because I think that more people like kind of just want to get to know me and like what I'm doing and not just like education. So
100%. Kind of an abstract question. What would you like to see, if anything, in the field of ABA change to?
I think I literally just had this conversation with some. I think it was literally on TikTok Live earlier today because I was doing makeup. I was like, let me just go to TikTok Live since I'm trying to do better on TikTok. I honestly would love for ABA to be utilized more with other disciplines. Like as a social worker, I think that there is so much that any field, honestly, but because I'm a social worker, I think there is so much that each field can really benefit from one another. And I think that if it is that we're really wanting ABA to honestly like expand outside of the related service providers that we coordinate care with due to servicing children and their families that have autism, it's going to be necessary if we want the field to be more known, or if we want to show people that like we can do other things aside from just working directly with autistic children or individuals with developmental disabilities or TBIs and things like that. So I definitely think more collaboration and us really going into other spaces and helping them to understand the science and not with all the jargon, because even sometimes I'm like,
That's enough.
Don't say you don't
Yeah.
have to say all those words. Like, don't even tell me all those words because, like, what are you talking about? What is that? Let me look that up. Okay, all right, I understand. But I think even for me, like, I've started to do a lot of work with in early childhood education, and not even from a perspective of like you have a child in your classroom with autism, which is more rising in early childhood spaces, but this is just how you can help to increase your behavior management in your classroom and, set up the environment in your classroom to be more conducive. And I've been even literally last weekend, I was at 2 weeks ago, actually, I presented at a Sunday school. Which was, I was like, the church got me up in here. Hallelujah.
You're a big deal if God's asking.
I know, right? I said, okay, God, I'm going to tithe a little bit of the collection. I'm going to tithe it back. Don't you worry. I got you, God. But yeah, so it's just like even that opportunity in itself to be able to stand in front of Sunday school teachers and, the people that are running the church to help them to understand, like, how can we help all of our families that are coming to our Sunday school program. So I thought that was pretty cool and really like a way that we are expanding the field as well as having it be a little bit more accessible.
Yeah. No, I love that answer, honestly.
Thank you.
All right. So as we wrap up, where can our listeners and viewers find you?
Yes, so you can find me on pretty much all social media platforms. That would be TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, of course. I don't know. I must forget YouTube. At Dr. Nandi Nelson. That is DrNandiNelson. And that's where you can find me.
Check out thekarmacollection.com for stylish, ABA-inspired apparel that spreads the message of behavior science with every wear. Free shipping on orders over $120. thekarmacollection.com